I had to learn to give myself value and to create a story that would be able to sell the product, which in this case was me. And that was a learning curve, because from where I come from, in my family, your credentials, your accomplishments speak for you, and you don't say anything because that's bragging. And the good Catholic church girl in me doesn't like bragging. That doesn't feel right. So that was difficult to learn. But once I learned it, I felt comfortable with it because I'm representing who I am. I'm not hiding who I am. And hopefully whoever's on the other side of that screen or table is going to say, look, I want that person to represent me. I want that person to provide insight in whatever is going on in my professional life. So I started learning from everybody, even the people that I didn't necessarily click with, but there was a detail of that interaction, that networking interaction that was beneficial. So you learn to be even more observant of human behavior and be more strategic with your time, because you can't go to all events. You can't be part of every networking organization. You have BNIs, the lawyer focus groups. You can try those, it's good because they have different purposes until the money starts coming in. And people don't like how the money's being reinvested, how distributions are happening. The person who's doing the daily operations of the business is locking the person out of the bank account so they can't see the money coming in. And the person that has control of the bank account is telling the other person, oh, well, no money is coming in. We're not doing it very well.
Today on the Founders Circle Podcast, we have Arianna Mendez, and we talk about the practice of law, we talk about motherhood, we talk about the importance of being resilient and fearless. I hope you will enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Thank you so much, Arianna, for joining us today on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and how that led to your entrepreneur journey?
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the invite. So I was born in California, Cuban parents. My parents were a bit older, so their life experiences were a little bit different than maybe my peers who had younger parents. But they fled Cuba after the Communist Revolution. My dad's family completely lost everything. This is a common story for anybody who lives in South Florida.
Sure. Right.
But I definitely grew up with these stories about how life was like and the responsibility I had to do better and to be able to pursue my dreams and do something for myself professionally. So I went to college, I got a master's degree, I went eventually to law school. I dabbled in politics before going to law school. I was a speechwriter. So I had a very interesting build up to becoming a lawyer. And my first job out of law school was working for the state attorney's office. So I always knew I wanted to be an advocate. And I quickly learned to the state attorney's office that I loved the trial experience I got there, but I didn't necessarily want to do that long term. So finding something that fit into this narrative I had growing up, where you had to protect what you have, finally, I found my way to business litigation and protecting businesses and the legacy of those businesses, because people go through a lot to protect and build those institutions up. So I really enjoyed that opportunity to play a role in that family history, which tied in perfectly to growing up with that story of my parents losing everything because of a system that failed, because of laws that were not there to protect property rights and ownership rights. So you grow up with that, and I eventually found where I am now, firm owner after 6 years, and loving what I do, which is to protect people and the things they've built.
Looking back, do you think that having gone through that experience, watching your parents lose everything, did that affect your desire to want to be an entrepreneur? And how did that shape did you have an idea that you would do this eventually?
So I thought I was going to be a career prosecutor, because as a lot of immigrants, families have, you work for somebody, you do well in school, and you go work for somebody else. And that's just a reality of it. But I was always somebody who took initiative, who was a go-getter, who figured it out. And my last boss, before I became a firm owner, was very much into telling me to go figure it out. So, which is good. Yes. His Socratic method was, we need to get A and B done, go Westlaw it and report back. Well, I'm grateful for him because he did teach me self-reliance within the scope, which was outside my comfort zone, because I always thought I would work for somebody else. But I quickly understood that why not me? Why couldn't I take the risk and do it? And at that time, I was married, but had no kids, so I had more time to set that up. I have a lot of respect for my colleagues who are setting that up with families already established, because it's hard. It's very time consuming. But it can be very rewarding because you're creating something that is a reflection of your values. And for me, that was excellence, because you do the best job you can every time you step into the arena. Integrity, because for me, that's paramount. And perseverance, because you have to be able to fall down and get back up, and everything that you do. And I always tell clients, like, we will find a legal way to get where you want to be. Just because we have one setback doesn't mean that that's the end of it. And that's exciting to me, because I'm able to build something that's reflective of my values, pick my cases, pick my clients.
That was very unique.
Which you cannot do when you work at the state attorney's office. Your client is the state of Florida. It's the entire state of Florida with its very diverse and competing interests. When you work at a law firm, your boss chooses your clients and you get a stack of files on your desk. So, but I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. And I think law school doesn't prepare you for that decision either, which is ironic, because our history as a profession is very much a one-man show.
Right.
You would, open a shingle somewhere, a small town lawyer. That's the heart of our profession, but they don't prepare you for that. So there was a lot of working through things. I opened my firm during COVID. I had a tiny 500 square foot office. I was my own paralegal, receptionist, you know the drill. And I learned to do every job in my firm, which is a very humbling and very empowering experience. So I'm very grateful for that. But I had to learn fast what was the business of law, and how to make money and how to get clients, because I stepped into that new entrepreneur identity with no client book, which is frightening. But you learn to network. You shake every hand you can. You knock on every door. And when you're not doing the work that you do, you're meeting new people, sharing your story, and getting to connect so that people learn about you. But I had to learn that by doing it. There wasn't a class I took or anything like that.
Yeah, I think that that component of entrepreneurship, you have to have it within you. It's really hard to teach that aspect of like putting yourself in the situation where you're just gonna figure it out. And I think that's something that we lack perhaps in these next generations, like a sense of resilience to be able to say, hey, this is a setback, but I can overcome it. There's something here that I just need to learn and move forward. Looking back, what was the most difficult at the time when you were starting? What component of the entrepreneurship?
I didn't know how to sell my services, because my credentials always spoke for me before. I had really good grades. I had this impeccable resume. I had all that you needed to be successful at a big institution, either public or private. But here I had to pitch it to somebody. I had to learn to give myself value and to create a story that would be able to sell the product, which in this case was me. And that was a learning curve, because from where I come from, in my family, your credentials, your accomplishments speak for you, and you don't say anything because that's bragging. And the good Catholic Church girl in me doesn't like bragging. That doesn't feel right. So that was difficult to learn. But once I learned it, I felt comfortable with it, because I'm representing who I am. I'm not hiding who I am. And hopefully whoever's on the other side of that screen or table is going to say, look, I want that person to represent me. I want that person to provide insight in whatever is going on in my professional life. After I switched my mindset and understood that that was the rules of the game, I can play that game, because I'm okay to be myself. I'm comfortable with who I am. I'm comfortable with the work I do. I'm proud of the work I do. And the rest, you fill in the blanks. But that took a bit. And that takes confidence that you develop over time by pitching, by learning how to present your ideas a certain way. And also understanding that not every handshake you have or have the opportunity to shake somebody's handshake is going to translate to business now.
Right.
It could be a later thing, and be okay with that. But at least you put your best foot forward. But as a young law firm owner starting out, I had no idea. I thought every contact was going to produce a lead. And every lunch that I could barely afford to go to, I was going to result in a client. But you learn to be more strategic about that. That young lawyer had a lot to figure out, and she had her story, and she's, I'm her because of that experience. So I'm proud of that. But I wish that our law schools took the time to say, hey, some of you will eventually make it into being business owners. This is the practice of law so that you can keep the lights on. They don't teach you that.
The business side of it. I think they do a good job most of the time at teaching you the academics of how to think like a lawyer. But I think the day-to-day practical considerations are often overlooked, and maybe I just didn't take more. At the time when I was in law school, the externships were a big thing.
Of course.
That's still
Yeah.
the same.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps maybe I didn't go to the state attorney's office, so maybe I would have gotten more experience there. But in terms of private practice in the civil world, I think there's a gap there that needs to be filled, because you're right. Most of the time, you're not going to go into, or at least long term, you're not going to be at a big law firm or right size. You're really going to be in a small or by yourself.
Yeah.
A solo. Did you do anything to help hone those, to fill in the gap yourself? Like if there was somebody out there that is starting their journey as a law firm owner, did anything help you?
I would oftentimes go to networking events and stand back and watch other people in the room network and go there, not so necessarily for me to make a connection, which would happen because somebody would approach me, hey, what do you do? But I would also observe how people connected and the value of the different connection styles. Because you had the bossy one that would bump into every conversation. You know that person is not going to be remembered for the right reasons. You have the really elegant person who knows how to navigate and work the room. And then you have the person in the middle. I wanted to be the person in the middle because that person is consistent. And that's who I wanted to be. Because when you're growing your business, that's the key to it, being consistent. So I needed consistently new clients. I needed consistently new leads. So I started learning from everybody, even the people that I didn't necessarily click with, but there was a detail of that interaction, that networking interaction that was beneficial. So you learn to be even more observant of human behavior and be more strategic with your time, because you can't go to all events. You can't be part of every networking organization. You have BNIs, the lawyer focus groups. You can try those. It's good because they have different purposes. So a mixed profession group like a BNI, for example, you learn there to pitch to people across the board, because not everybody's a lawyer.
Right.
When you're in a lawyer-centered environment, then you learn how to pitch to your colleagues, which is a different sale completely. So I learned that, but I learned that a lot through observation. So after 1-2 years of that, I started to get good at it and understanding how to, make those connections, but also have mentorship opportunities, which I think for women is a whole lot harder to find.
It is.
And also understand that not everybody is your friend. Somebody is okay to be a referral partner and that's it. But also take some value out of that relationship, because there's people I go to lunch with still and we don't talk personal. It's all business. And it's okay, because I get something from that interaction that has its own value, which is we're discussing recent Supreme Court opinions, or we're discussing recent changes to laws, or hey, did you see that legal update, or this and that. Those conversations are fine because those are in that context useful. So I had to learn that. Nobody taught me that. And that was very different from what I understood to be the rules of the game when I first started as a lawyer working at the state attorney's office and then at a law firm, where you had a boss, you had a very clear path to victory, which was either getting promoted as a prosecutor or, if in the law firm, being partner. Once those guardrails were taken off and I had my own version of success to craft, then it's very liberating, because I can take the time to do a podcast like this and enjoy it and gain the benefit of that, enjoying the moment and connecting with somebody new and their audience, and understanding that that has a place and it's not everything is transactional. And that, again, there's nobody that teaches you that. You have to experience it. But to answer your question, somebody starting out, what to do, observe. And be okay with not being the star of the room.
I like, generally, like, I love that you're saying that, because I found that to be the best way of learning when I was first starting to practice, because you start to, and not only in terms of how they act, but how they write. I remember I love writing, I love reading. That really was what drew me to the practice of law. And studying different styles of writing, you develop you hone in your own craft and like how to express yourself in your own style. And I still carry that with me today, because it's like crafting your own personality. Sure. As an attorney, as a writer. And I love, even I've expressed to you that I really was not in the courtroom as much as I now wish I would have been, or put myself in those positions. But I love observing the courtroom. Yeah. How judges interact with attorneys, how attorneys interact with other attorneys, with their clients. And I think that it's free. Really, right? If you're a young attorney, go down to the court. I still do it. Sometimes friends of mine that are on the bench, I say, hey, can I observe your hearings? Can I observe motion calendar? And of course, I feel silly because I'm sitting there, but I love it. I learn so much about the human experience, about human interactions, how I want to present myself, how am I coming across by watching others do it. And again, it's free. Yeah. And I think we take it for granted.
People watching is a great teacher. Oh, yeah. And it's to the smallest detail how somebody grabs a cup of coffee. Somebody could do it sloppy, somebody could do it elegantly. How a person stands and owns a space. Women sometimes have a problem with owning space, because I think we're conditioned to be people pleasers and we're always taking care of others. Men don't have that issue, right? So they're more comfortable in taking up space in a room. So watching the great male litigators, how they do that. You're not going to be a man. As a woman litigator, I don't want to be a man. But I want to take certain things from that presentation that work with me, which is confidence, articulating clearly, being direct in the approach. You don't need the flowery language to convey to a jury. And sometimes it backfires on you. Women tend to over-explain. So you take bits and pieces from people and you collect them, and then you internalize what works for you and not. And I think, to your point, a courtroom is a great ecosystem to observe, because you have the authority figure, which is a judge. You have the bailiff, which is adjacent to the authority figure. You have the jury, who is the ultimate authority, who is the trier of fact. And then you have the litigants and their representatives. And then you see the personalities unfold. Sometimes the best prepared attorney may not have the best presentation, and that can even affect the quality of their case. And that's bad to hear, and I'm sure all the professionals out there, yeah, but I prepared the most. But sometimes it doesn't matter. It's how you present it. Right. And I think, style points, there's a reason why you get points for style in the Olympics, because it matters. And unfortunately, I think we need to be comfortable with understanding that it's a stagecraft. When you're a litigator, it's a stagecraft. When you're a lawyer, you're in front of a third party, either a client or opposing counsel. There is a bit of theatrics involved. Understanding who your legal persona is, making sure it's authentic to yourself, and making sure that you can make those meaningful connections. If you're a law firm owner, those are your three things. And again, you have to just absorb that through interacting in the real world. Not behind a screen, just going to motion calendar. You have to go out there and interface with other people in your profession and the people that are consuming your product. In this case, your legal services.
So jumping a little bit, I love that word. I feel like a nerd because that's not your typical conversation. Sure. Perhaps it's very specific to the practice of law, even though I don't think so. I think if you're a doctor, how watching other doctors is essential and helpful to craft who you want to be. Sure. But I love that conversation. But like moving to a different direction, focusing on something that you said initially, people protecting what they have created. And I'm sure you feel it as a business owner as well. Yeah. What are some practical considerations that you can give to business owners that are just starting out? Maybe, just starting out and maybe a couple years in.
Okay. So if you're starting out, you have limited funds and you probably don't put a high priority having good contracts. But most litigation that comes up is bad contracts. Right. So unfortunately, I'm sorry to tell a business owner starting out, you need to invest in a good engagement contract for what your services are. If you're a social media influencer, you need to make sure you have good contracts so that when you're selling your services to a brand, it protects you. If you are a trucking business and you are accepting orders, you need to make sure any contracts you're entering into are protecting you and are protecting also how you're going to get those orders long term. You need liability insurance. You need to make sure that that's in place. You need to make sure you're under the right corporate entity. Does it make sense for you to be a S Corp versus a C Corp? Does it make sense to you? You need an LLC. Why be an LLC? If you are an LLC, do you have the proper agreements in place? Because everything is great until it isn't. And maybe that person who you went into business with decides that they're going to start locking you out of the accounts and you don't have access to your business account anymore. And then you end up in court in a business divorce, which is its own flavor of crazy and toxic, right? So unfortunately, even if it's casual, if you're starting anything off, you need to have the right foundation. That means good operating agreements, good vendor contracts, and you need to keep clean records of what you have. I'm not talking about case management system or anything complex like that. It can be a OneNote. It can be on your desktop, but something that keeps track of what's happening in your business. Because if something does occur, and you usually see this with employment cases, and I'm sure the employment lawyers can go on and on about that. You don't have clear timesheets, that's a problem. You don't have if you're selling goods, you don't have clear records what's coming in and what's coming out, you have a problem. If you're in an investment portfolio and you have a lot of shareholders involved and things are not going great because maybe you got a lawsuit and you had to pay out a settlement and you have liquidity issues, you have a problem if you don't have a good paperwork, making sure every action is supported by majority votes. So all of that is a long way to tell you is being meticulous in how you execute contracts, and record keeping will protect you in a litigation. Now, it won't stop litigation from happening. As a business gets bigger, it exposes itself to more threats.
Unfortunately, yes, that is the reality.
Yes. So I always tell my client, it's a good thing you're being sued. That means that you're doing well. That they don't want to hear that, but it's an icebreaker. But unfortunately it's kind of the payment to do business, right? It's the price you pay to do business. So protect yourself, have good systems, take the time to do them. When you're starting out, you don't have much funds. So I get that. You may not be able to hire a lawyer like me to help you through that process, but there's certain things you can do. Maybe you don't do all contracts, but maybe you do your main contract, right, and make that more comprehensive so that it protects you more. As you get bigger, maybe you invest in other services as your needs change. If you are a operation, meaning a multi-partner operation, and you have a lot of people with their hands in a pie, you need to make sure you have a good operating agreement, because people are not going to have long-term success in that business if they don't feel that their interests are protected. I see a lot of operating agreements that come through my desk, very well intentioned, drafted by people that I think had the best intentions. Sometimes it's lawyers, sometimes it's not. But they fail to address serious issues that can come up. What if you don't agree on something? What happens to the company? Well, do you have statute that it falls back on? Okay, that's great. But then that leaves, they have to go probably to court to get an judicial intervention to enforce that. So you need to be meticulous about the details. But sometimes having that formality of going to a lawyer's office and say, okay, we're going to go into business and this is what we want to do. I'll take a vitamin business, right? We're going to bring out this vitamin. It's going to change the world, blah, blah. All starts out great until the money starts coming in and people don't like how the money's being reinvested, how distributions are happening. The person who's doing the daily operations of the business is locking the person out of the bank account so they can't see the money coming in. And the person that has control of the bank account is telling the other person, oh, well, no money is coming in and we're not doing it very well. And that's a lot. So I can go on and on.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, the stories that you have,
yes,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So sometimes taking a pause and saying, look, I really want to do this. I really want to go into business with you, but I need XYZ. XYZ is I need a good comprehensive engagement contract, whatever that is. If it's a partnership, I need a good operating agreement, or a partnership agreement, whatever version of the LLC or corporate entity you're doing, and making sure that everybody's rights is protected. That's why I like to say that operating agreements are like prenuptial agreements for businesses.
Right.
And they're necessary. And unfortunately, nobody wants to do that because everybody wants to talk about how we're going to promote the brand, how we're going to make so much money, we're going to do so well. Yes. Which is important because that's what's going to pay the bills and pay people like me and the accountants, right? But you need to make sure everybody's interests are protected because it's going to go bad. It will always go bad. If you start having significant success, people are going to have disagreements of how that profit is spent. That's just the nature of the game.
Right. And other issues unfold in addition
Yes.
to that.
Yes.
Um, what are the biggest, I guess, so people can get a flavor of what you typically see, what are the biggest disagreements that you see right now?
Mm. Well, so
Besides knowing how to spend.
it's usually disclosure issues. People feeling like they don't have access to books or records, or they're not part of the decision making. I see this a lot with managing members versus regular members. For those of you that don't know the difference in an LLC, LLCs are usually member managed or manager managed. If you're manager managed, that means of the members, there's a small group that do kind of the daily operation. Yeah. So usually the minority members who are not the managing members will always have objections to how the business is being run because they feel their voice is not being heard. So one of the things I always tell my clients is that's fine. They can have those concerns, but make sure you create a record that these are things are being discussed in an open board meeting, that everything is being jotted down, things are being discussed. They're given an opportunity, even if they're outnumbered, if they don't have the votes to get their will passed, at least there's a record that there was the discussion and that everything was disclosed. Because the last thing you want is allegations of breach of fiduciary duty against the managing members or unclean hands, self-dealing. Be very careful, especially if you are lending money to this business, if you're one of those managing members and you haven't gone through the proper protocols, because obviously the minority members are going to have their issues. I also see issues a lot when negotiating commercial leases. Certain provisions are not negotiated properly. So, for example, you're a restaurant and one of your big attractive features is that you want to put seating outside because there's a spectacular view. And the landlord doesn't allow that, or you didn't account for that in the lease. Whoever negotiated that lease with you could potentially have exposed you to tremendous liability and affect your profits. So that's something you need to make sure that if you have a list of things that must occur in that lease, you negotiate that properly and incorporate it into the lease. Something else I see, and this one it comes up in franchise cases, is not understanding how the system works or how the business deal actually works. I call it the voodoo talk. So if something is too complicated and you can't really explain it to a fourth grader, usually that's where problems arise. And in franchise setups, that's usually what happens.
Right, it's complex. It's not.
Right. So if people don't understand how something works, they will obviously feel like somebody is hiding the ball, is behaving like the wizard boss behind the curtain, that sort of stuff. And that's when litigation can occur. And also understanding what your commitments are under any agreement. That's why I always tell people, get a lawyer. Even if you're entering a small, just negotiate. Some lawyers can do stuff on flat fees. Ask them. They may be willing to work with you. That's a nice thing about boutique firms like mine. I don't have a one size fits all. It's very a la carte, depends on the needs of the client, and that way they feel like they have some flexibility. Bigger firms don't have that flexibility. Those those timetables and price tags are already set up by management. So that's the nice thing about my style a firm is that you get that flexibility. So even if you think, oh no, that's going to be super expensive, ask the question. It may not be as expensive as you think.
That's true.
And it'll probably save you a lot more money in the long run.
I think the name of the game is being proactive versus reactive. So many times we think, like you said, it's going to be so expensive to go see an attorney, but I always like to consider how expensive is it going to be when you have to go in and try to fix an issue that's already created?
Yes.
Or has continued to, progress instead of nipping it in the bud.
100%.
So I think you bring up a really important consideration for business owners. It's like, let's try to establish the system versus having to, I don't know, deal with essentially bigger issues that could have been resolved at the outset.
And I get it. I was there. When I opened my 500 square foot office, I didn't have a lot of processes and procedures because it was an army of one, right? But as you grow and you get more people involved, you need to have systems. And the systems will cost you money in the long run, the lack thereof.
Right.
So I think that is something, it's kind of a conversation that needs to happen and you need to actually act on it. And again, it doesn't have to be complex. You can create some of these systems in a Word document. And then that actually becomes a business record that ever you have an issue about protocols, it can be referenced back of, well, these are the procedures that were in place. and again, it's a document you created, and that can be a defense to all sorts of allegations in the future. So I think that that is helpful. And I always tell clients, sometimes the question, having like a general counsel relationship where you can pick up the phone and say, hey, what do you think of this? Will save you so much in the long run. And it's the investment is not, it's nothing compared to what you're saving, and are even able to scale from that advice. So it's having those dialogues with business owners. My favorites are the middle-sized businesses, because those are the ones that have made it to mid-size and need the push to get to the next level. Usually those are the ones that are most reluctant to bring in counsel, because they have systems in place that have been hodgepodged over time.
I've seen that.
Yes. But for me, that's the most exciting opportunity, because you get somebody who has the potential to grow to the next level, just needs a bit of streamlining to those systems to make sure that liability is mitigated. And that way they can continue to grow. And of course, issues are going to come up, because as they continue to grow, they will. But then they already have the in-house counsel to help them to do that. So for me, those were really exciting opportunities. And I'm always very proud and humbled at the same time if I get one of those businesses asking for my help, because I get to have a part in their story, and it's just scaling that for their family.
I was just going to say that I think it's a positive experience for us as well, because you do feel committed to that client. You do feel committed to their journey.
Yes.
And being an integral part of that.
Yes.
I just want to thank you so much for joining me. I like to end on what piece of advice you would offer a female entrepreneur or aspiring entrepreneur, and that you probably would have benefited from. So if you could think of one thing, what would that be?
Be fearless. There's very few things in life that cannot be reversed. And it's okay if you make a mistake. You'll learn from that mistake. And I think sometimes, I'll speak from my experience, when I was younger, I was afraid to make mistakes. Now I understand there's growth from that. And sometimes, and this is popular, right? You learn from your mistakes, but I can't emphasize this enough. You make mistakes, you bounce back from it. That says more about you as a person, and that builds character. And that's really the true benefit of mistakes, bouncing back from them.
All right. That's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me.
No, thanks for the invite.
I want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this podcast, what was your favorite part? What was a lesson that you learned? You can follow us on all these social media platforms, and I want to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe and like.